evening. I'm Norah O'Donnell in Washington.
And I'm Major Garrett in Des Moines, Iowa. Welcome to a special edition of America Decides. It's 7 p.m. here in Iowa, and that means the first in the nation caucuses are officially underway. Later this evening, we should know, if everything works right, which Republican candidate has won the first state in the presidential nomination process.
And as we come on the air, we have some new information from entrance polls as the Republican Iowa caucuses are now underway. Right now, Iowans across the state are braving these sub-zero conditions to award 40 of the 1,215 delegates a candidate needs overall to win the Republican presidential nomination. At this hour, CBS News can characterize the race as lean Trump. These are from our entrance polls and the most important issues, too, we're learning more about. Let's bring in our CBS News Chief Elections and Campaign Correspondent, Robert Costa. He's there at Trump headquarters. And, Bob, what are you hearing at this hour from your sources?
Great to be with you, Nora and Major. Here at Trump headquarters in Des Moines, Iowa, there is a belief that he has tremendous support across the state. That's the phrase Trump used earlier today when speaking to reporters. They have a ground operation here, but even deeper than that, fundamental support from evangelical Christians and conservative Republicans across Iowa who believe Trump gave them in the presidency what they always wanted, a shift of the Supreme Court to the right, social policy that really appealed to right-wing Republicans. And now he's about to reap the benefits of all of that tonight in Iowa, should he win the caucuses. CBS News projecting it's leaning toward Trump at this point.
And Robert, what about that all-important race for second place? Will Nikki Haley have the organizing team in order to bring her to second place? Is the support there? What do you know?
For so long, it's been Florida Governor Ron DeSantis who has been making that real play for second place, but his campaign has struggled, even though his super PAC has knocked on nearly 1 million doors across Iowa. He's still hoping for a second place finish here tonight, but it is Nikki Haley, the former Trump ambassador, who has real momentum in New Hampshire, and she's hoping she can now generate some traction in Iowa that could bounce her into the Granite State primary later this month. And many Republican donors across the country tell me, Nora, that they are ready to pour millions of dollars behind her candidacy to make her the standard bearer for traditional Republicans should she have a strong second or third place here tonight and then heading into New Hampshire, maybe even score an upset against Trump. I've spoken to so many voters. I've also spoken to Donald Trump. And Trump told me that he sees his time in the courthouse, whether it's on the civil level or the criminal level, as equivalent to being on the campaign trail. They're one and the same to him. And his voters see it the same way. They're not looking at his legal challenges as a challenge to his candidacy. In fact, it's something that seems to fuel their own support for Trump, fuel their grievances about the perceived political establishment and legal establishment in this country. So there's not a reservation about Trump among his supporters. They want to see a revival of Trump despite everything that's going on with the January 6th case, the classified records case, the Georgia case, among others that are looking into his role on January 6th and his conduct while in the White House.
And Robert, just a short time ago, Donald Trump entered the Hotel Fort Des Moines, and he was asked by our own Olivia Rinaldi if he would attend the E. Jean Carroll trial tomorrow, and he said, "You're going to see," and then walked away. Once again, the courtroom, one of the stops in between these campaign stops by Donald Trump. How does that affect this race?
Olivia Rinaldi and all of our campaign reporters doing an excellent job staking out these campaigns, and you really get a sense about how the legal issues hover over Trump, even as he's poised for a victory here in Iowa tonight, being asked by Olivia about that E. Jean Carroll defamation case. Trump is scheduled to have appearances in that case this week about the rape allegation that Trump has been accused of in civil court. And he has been said to now have to stand ready to pay damages. But he's been arguing with the judge in that case with his legal team that he shouldn't have to attend due to his mother-in-law's funeral this week.
2/3 of voters in those entrance polls say that he is still fit to be president, even if convicted of a crime. Robert Costa, thank you. Major?
Let's go now to CBS Morning's co-host Tony DeCopel, who was inside a caucus site for us at Beaver Creek Elementary School in Johnston, Iowa. Tony, good evening.
Hey, good evening, Major Garrett. I'm going to keep my voice a little bit low because they are on the brink of beginning this caucus here behind me. There's about 75, maybe 100 people in the room. I think they're going to be a little bit delayed in the start, though, because they've got a very long line of people out front. This is a heavily Democratic era. It skews to registered Democrats. And one of the things we were wondering tonight is whether we'd see a large number of Democrats come fill out the paperwork to switch parties so they can participate in this Republican caucus. And what I'll tell you is they've got dozens and dozens of those forms at the front. People are switching. They are so concerned about this election. They want their voice heard from the Democratic side playing in the Republican caucus. They've actually run out of the forms here at Beaver Creek Elementary School. So you've got a lineup outside of Republicans trying to check in. You've got a second pool of Democrats waiting for additional paperwork to be brought in so that they can change their registration and get into this high school gym right here. So pretty dynamic and fluid situation. In terms of chatting with the voters, things that they are looking for, things that they're not looking for, they've made up their minds by and large. Some people are still open to a change. They're going to hear their community members speak on behalf of different candidates. This is a Nikki Haley room by and large with a smattering of Trump voters. That's my temperature take just walking around. Ron DeSantis does not have a lot of support in this particular venue. That is a meaningless data point, but I offer it up because it's where I'm standing on this spot on God's green earth. So we will keep you posted on things as they unfold here. And I'm really actually quite excited. This is democracy in action. Every time we have a presidential election and I'm able to get into a room for a primary vote or a caucus, it just sort of fills me with butterflies. And they're just beginning, so I'll toss it back to you.
And Tony, I want to ask you about the process you outlined, because it will take a little bit of time, because this is a party building exercise run by the Republican Party. And if you want to change your registration, you not only have to have voter ID, you have to bring proof of your residency, a lease or a utility bill. That takes a little bit of time to go through. If you're going to go through that process, and clearly that's happening there, that is going to slow things down a bit. Yes?
Yeah, that is true, and that is what's happening. I also want to tell you that what just happened behind me is a leader of the caucus site here stood before his fellow Republicans and offered a motion to accommodate the additional voters who are trying to register, and they're delaying the start. It's already 7 p.m., so things should have begun, but they have not. And so they said all in favor of delaying the start so we can get everybody processed. Say aye, and I think you may have heard the aye. So this is a sign of engagement. It's a sign of excitement, and it gets me excited, frankly.
Engagement and process. Everyone wants to keep the process orderly and transparent. Tony DeCopel, thank you so very much. Let's go now to CBS News Election and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanta, who is standing by at the CBS News data desk with more insight into the top issues on the minds of caucus goers this evening. Anthony, what can you share with us?
Hey there, Major. And first of all, tell Tony his precinct is absolutely not meaningless. It is meaningful. It's one of 1,600. We'll get the data from there, just like we get from every place else. So that's great. But look, we're going to be talking a lot tonight about not just Donald Trump. We're going to be talking about issues of democracy. And one of them is right here from the entrance poll. This is our survey of people going into the caucus. One of the things they were asked, is Donald Trump fit to be president if convicted of a crime? And you're at 2/3 right now, these caucus goers who say yes. And I put this out there right up front because this is going to be one of those things we talk about all through the campaign, right? This question, Republicans, and we've seen this in our polling, we see this here in the entrance poll, are feeling that the charges against him are politically motivated, especially those in the MAGA base. They are in favor of, majority of them in favor of, him seeking revenge against political opponents. This is an animating force. So not only does he have strong support, but some of these ideas are running through at least this very conservative caucus, Major.
And Anthony, we love to be transparent about our internal process here at CBS News. We have characterized this caucus as lean Trump. How did we get there?
We got there because based on our entrance polls interviews, now this is people's intent going in, they are right now very strongly saying that they were preparing to vote for Donald Trump. Now, let me be clear. They have not yet done so. This is the entrance poll. However, those numbers, I can tell you, when I see them coming in, are very strong. And so we can say that based on the intentions of people in that entrance poll that is leaning Trump. It's not a projection, but we're giving you, the viewer, the most up-to-date information that we have, and that is what our current entrance poll shows you.
Coming to us from our trusty and ever-reliable data desk, Anthony Salvanto, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Adrian Anthony, thank you. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is also in Des Moines and has been following the candidates' final pitches. I know you've been out on the road for 2 weeks talking to voters, talking to the candidates. Let me ask you tonight, what are you hearing? What are you watching for?
Well, Nora, I think that the big factor, obviously, is the weather. Did it compel people to stay home, or did it maybe even compel them more so to not only show up, but maybe bring people along? You know, after 3 or 4 days of sitting inside, they may have thought this was a good excuse to get out of the house. But if and when we get results, where exactly is it coming from? And did that perhaps give an indication of the weather concerns? We've heard throughout the day, for example, the Trump campaign across the state trying to literally dig out supporters in some of the far conservative rural reaches of this state. That's the kind of organization and commitment that the former president and his team have put into the state that he failed to put in 8 years ago when he lost. And look at these temperatures for tonight, as low as -17, some wind chills in the north central parts of the state into the -30s as people race from the parking lot into the church or the library or the town hall that might be hosting these caucuses. It'll be very curious to see if turnout gets anywhere near the roughly 186,000 Republicans who participated back in 2016. State party leaders had been hoping for record turnout tonight, now conceding that may not happen.
And Ed, does the size of Trump's potential victory matter? I ask that because if you go back and look throughout history, Trump could be on track to smash essentially the Republican record for the largest victory margin in the history of the Iowa caucuses. The current record held by Bob Dole, who defeated Pat Robertson by 13 points. What will that mean? What will it tell us?
It would be a huge signal to the rest of the Republican Party and really to the world that in the first election for a presidential candidate in the post-January 6th era, he not only won, but won so defiantly in this state, once a swing state, proving that his stranglehold on the Republican Party is indeed just that. His opponents, depending on how close they are to him, will argue, well, now we're going into states where you have a different mix of Republican voter, a different mix of voters overall, in the kinds of states you need to win in order to not just win a primary, but win the White House. New Hampshire, which has an open primary process, allowing independents to participate. South Carolina, where you got a lot of snowbirds who've moved from other parts of the country and are changing that state's politics. And then eventually to places like Michigan and the Super Tuesday states, if they're able to hold on. But if he wins by 13, 20, 25 points over Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley tonight, they will struggle to justify their continued existence in this race. It might leave some Republican voters saying, gosh, I would have liked some options into March, but they may not be able to afford it if the donor money is drying up and they're looking for alternatives themselves.
Ed O'Keefe, thank you for your reporting. We appreciate it. And CBS News chief political analyst and anchor of CBS News Primetime, John Dickerson, is with us following along with all the results as they come in. John, you have seen the latest entrance poll data lean Trump. Not a huge surprise given the consistency of the polling that we have looked at. So what do you hope to glean from tonight's results?
Well, who's got a story coming out of this, Nora? And that story could be Donald Trump wins big and it's over. It's not just it, but also it could be in a second place showing who can convert whatever happens into the story that Republican voters in the next states, if the contest goes on there, can tell their friends, and that begins the conversation if there's a different change in this race, which has been essentially been frozen, except, as Major Garrett pointed out, for people dropping out of the race. In 1996, Lamar Alexander came in third in Iowa, but that was the story because he wasn't supposed to do even that well, and he turned it into something. Of course, he didn't turn it into the nomination, but it's who tonight has something that they can turn into a story, and it could very well be Donald Trump who starts the story as his move into the basically general election mode.
Mm-hmm. Lamar with the exclamation point, as his sign said. That was my first campaign and my first trip to Iowa. Of many, of course, the man with the red and black checked shirt. Remember that? The piano? I know you guys were on the campaign trail with me way back then.
And you remember Lamar, it could be, you know, if it's a bad night, say, for Governor DeSantis, it puts him in the Lamar, Phil Gramm, Michelle Bachmann wing of the party, which is people who put all their chips onto Iowa, thought they had a connection with the socially conservative voters there, and then if it doesn't turn out, it ends up being the end of the campaign. Iowa is really more known in Republican circles, as everybody's been talking about, for false hope, the people who win it and don't go on, or candidacies that get buried in the snowdrifts.
Major.
And John, it's interesting to talk about Iowa because the Trump effect in Iowa has been pronounced since 2016. By my calculations, there are about 206 counties in the United States that voted Obama, then Trump in 2016. 31 of them are in Iowa, almost all of them in eastern Iowa. Once a Democratic stronghold, now not only just Republican, but staunchly Trump Republican. That talks to what we are seeing fueling an expected Trump victory tonight. Not only a light change from blue to red, but a deep redness in Iowa, reflective of Trump's involvement and influence here. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And what strikes me, Major, is the swing, and it's a lot's been written about it, but if you look at the history of Iowa, the swing in the evangelical voters, think about the evangelical candidates who've done well. Mike Huckabee and Pat Robertson in 1988, Huckabee in 2008. Huckabee, when he ran his campaign, ran an attack ad. He didn't actually run it, but produced an attack ad against Mitt Romney. And he said, if you'll lie in a campaign, you'll lie in office. Telling the truth was the signature attack against his chief rival. Huckabee was campaigning for Trump in Iowa. The change in the evangelical voter, which used to be all about personal morality and being a witness, as George W. Bush was, a man who shared the faith with those evangelicals and who said Christ was his chief political figure that he followed, the massive switch over to Trump. So you have those pivot counties you talked about where voters went for Obama, then found something to like in Trump. But you also have this massive shift in faith voters towards Donald Trump. And it looks, you know, like a locked-in shift.
Yeah, well, John Dickerson, thank you so much to watch for tonight. Who will come in second place? What is the margin of victory? And then, of course, we will continue to follow this contest as we head into New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Super Tuesday. And just a reminder, CBS News is characterizing the Iowa caucuses as lean Trump. I'm going to sign off now. I'm going to anchor the CBS Evening News after the football game, and then we'll continue to watch the results with you. So I hand it over to Major. He has more straight ahead. Major?
Thank you so much, Nora. Next, we will take you to the DeSantis and Haley campaign headquarters. You are streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. We are so glad you are with us. Here is a live look at a caucus site in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Iowa Republicans across the state are making their voices heard, undoubtedly, in the first in the nation caucuses. Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis are in what can only be described as a spirited fight to be the top Trump alternative here. CBS News campaign reporters Aaron Navarro and Nydia Cavazos join us now. Aaron, let me go to you first, please. You've been around and traveling with the DeSantis campaign. Give us your sense of not only DeSantis's expectations for this evening, but how the campaign finds itself battling for second place.
Well, it's mainly the rise of Nikki Haley that's resulted in that last battle, especially for second place. They kind of went into this race saying that this will be a two-man contest between themselves and Trump. And since the Milwaukee debate, DeSantis has, maintained his position in the polling, but Nikki Haley has risen, of course. But going into tonight, they're confident in their underdog label that they've dubbed themselves with, and that the grassroots organization that they built would never back down can turn out voters in time. And just from talking to a couple precinct captains that are supporting DeSantis or DeSantis supporters that are volunteering at certain precincts, they're saying that turnout is actually pretty high, and especially in the metro areas where it's really crucial for DeSantis to run the numbers up if he has any chance to establish himself in second place or cut into Trump's lead. The open question, though, is those rural counties that DeSantis has spent so much time voting or so much time holding events in, still unknown on where those votes stand or the turnout.
And Aaron, is there a sense anymore within the DeSantis campaign that they can credibly argue after Iowa it will be a two-person race, Trump and DeSantis?
Well, they think that that will happen after South Carolina. They're trying to put some pressure on Nikki Haley, the former governor of the Palmetto State, to win in South Carolina. Of course, polling shows Trump up in both New Hampshire and South Carolina. They are arguing that once she leaves the race in this scenario that they are playing out, that it will be the two-man contest then. Of course, Haley has shown no indication that she would leave even if she loses South Carolina.
Nydia, as we talk about underdog status, that's where Nikki Haley found herself probably 8 or 10 weeks ago. She's no longer the underdog in Iowa. How is the Haley campaign feeling this evening?
Well, the Haley campaign, as of this morning, they've been touting that this has become a two-person race. It is no longer about anybody else, but it is between Haley and former President Donald Trump. Now, it'll be just within a couple of hours that we'll truly know how accurate is the statement and if it's going to become a two-person race between Haley and former President Donald Trump. Now, what we do know for certain is that Haley has been campaigning up until the very last minute here in the state of Iowa. We were with her this past morning. She was going through from one city to the next, just really pitching her final message to Iowans. And she has two clear points that she's been giving Iowans throughout the day and throughout her campaign stops throughout the past months. You know, she's been saying that if Iowans are ready to move past former President Donald Trump and the chaos and the drama, as she says, that follows him, then she can be the true Trump alternative, and she's just ready to tackle the nation's most imminent security threats.
Aaron Navarro and Nydia Cavazos, thank you so very much. Republicans have been in a fierce competition in Iowa leading up to today. Despite extensive efforts by several prominent candidates to court voters in the Hawkeye State, they've fallen short to the former president. We'll have the latest polling after the break. You are streaming America Decides.
A conservative female president is something that I think America could use right about now.
We're doing that as we have entrance poll data that we're going over, plus results of the caucuses, which are now about 30 minutes old, have begun to trickle in. We're going to go to CBS News campaign reporter Torian Small, who joins us from Des Moines at another caucus location. Torian, what are you seeing?
Yeah, Major, what an interesting turn of events not too long ago. Donald Trump Jr. showed up to this caucus site. I've been talking about earlier how Nikki Haley was set to speak at this caucus site, so he showed up presumably to undercut some of her thunder here. Those speeches just wrapped. Nikki Haley started. She gave a general speech about why she thinks she's best fit to be the Republican presidential nominee. Donald Trump Jr. followed her and immediately targeted her, called her Hillary Clinton, said that she speaks one way in Iowa, and then in Washington, she's a completely different person. It's a very tense and awkward situation here, but we're now in a different part of the process.
Torian, thank you so much. CBS News can now make a projection in the Iowa Republican caucuses. That projection is that the projected winner, former President Donald Trump. That is based not only on results as they have begun to come in from the caucuses, now just a little bit more than a half an hour old, but also entrance poll data. Matching those two together gives us the confidence to project former President Trump as the winner. And this is a very early call in the evening, so it is likely to be a decisive outcome in favor of the former president, Donald Trump, the projected winner of the Iowa Republican caucuses. Let's go now, once again, to CBS News Election and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto, who is, of course, at the CBS News data desk. Anthony, tell us how we got here.
There you go, Major. Look, we've got entrance polls. We had them all over the state, and we had them talking to voters as they were going in. I can tell you they were overwhelmingly saying that they were going to vote for Donald Trump. And then, as we started to get a trickle of those results coming back from the precincts, in fact, Donald Trump. And all our model estimates here at the data desk were pointing to Donald Trump, and really, that's not a surprise to anyone. He was leading so handily in all of the pre-caucus election polls, so there's your projection for Donald Trump. Now, here's the other really important point. Delegates won. We have estimated right now there's 40 delegates at stake. Based on those early estimates, we can tell you that Donald Trump was going to get at least 11 of those delegates. Now, look, Iowa is about attention. It's about staking a claim to being a front runner, which Donald Trump obviously is. Really not the delegate math here that matters because there's a long way to go. But that's your delegates. And then I'll point you to the map here. And you can see we're starting to get this trickle of votes in. And out of them so far, he's got a comfortable edge. Having said that, we're going to watch this map all night. And here's the other thing. Is that there's going to be a race at least between DeSantis and Haley for second place. And that one may keep us up here for at least another hour as those start to come in, Major.
Understood. Anthony, is there a story within the story as to say which issues perhaps broke most favorably for the former president?
Yeah, there is indeed. I'm going to punch up here a couple of these. And, take a look at, first of all, the white evangelical vote here. You've got solid support for Donald Trump. Now, look, folks who know politics know that this is always a really important part of the Iowa caucus. White evangelical voters are going to be a large percentage. Well, Donald Trump, of course, they've shown him strong support for really through his presidency, and no change in that. The other one that I want to talk to, though, is this majority of Iowa caucus goers who said that if Donald Trump were to be convicted of a crime, they felt he would still be fit to be president. And I think that's really important because as themes of democracy are going to be talked about all through this campaign, that's one where you say, okay, well, there was those Republican-based voters. They feel that those indictments are politically motivated. They feel, in fact, that that's motivating for them to go out, and they tell us in the polling, to go out and support Donald Trump. And I think that's a key dynamic to watch in all this, Major.
Anthony Salvanto, thank you very much. Just to reset the clock, CBS News projects former President Donald Trump the projected winner of the Iowa Republican caucuses. For more, let's bring in CBS News campaign reporter Olivia Rinaldi. Olivia is at Trump headquarters here in Des Moines. Olivia, has that word spread to headquarters?
Yeah, hi, Major. We're here at the Trump Watch Party in Des Moines, and it has spread here, kind of. There's a lackluster party happening here. There's no one in here right now, but I could just hear cheers in the room next door, which is where the Trump media war room is happening. So clearly they must have heard or seen my tweet that I put out where Trump is projected to win the Iowa caucus here. I just heard something that Anthony said, though, that you could start to hear some cheers here, too, as people are finding out. I just heard something that Anthony said that I thought was interesting, which is the white evangelical vote that really delivered it for Trump tonight. I spoke earlier about how rural voters were really key to Trump, those older, whiter evangelical voters, and really turning them out was the key point tonight. That's what the campaign was really concerned about in my conversations with them, was really that this weather is impacting those people. This extreme cold weather was really preventing those folks from coming out tonight. That appears to not be the case, that they actually did turn out in droves, and Trump is appearing to win the Iowa caucus. It's starting to kind of become lively in here tonight, more people coming in, streaming in. So I expect this party to get started any moment now.
And Olivia, give our audience a sense of the level of, let's say, care, attention, one might even use the word devotion, that the Trump organization has placed to the importance of turning out even one or two potential Trump supporters in far-flung parts of Iowa, particularly hard hit by the most recent winter storm. I know you have some actual anecdotes about that. Please share them.
Yeah, I do. I spoke with the senior Trump campaign official in Iowa earlier today about their efforts to really get people to turn out to the precincts tonight. He told me that he is actually going door to door, clearing driveways for people. And these are farmers, so they're not short driveways. They're very long driveways. They've got gravel on them. They've got all these issues. And also they've had 4 to 5 feet of snow on top of them after this past week. It's been a huge problem. They haven't been able to get out of their houses. So he told me he's riding around this little skid steer, which if you don't know is this tiny little mobile with a little digger thing on the end of it that can push the snow out of the way. He's been going door to door to make sure these people can get out of the house.
Olivia, can I interrupt?
And that they can. Yeah, absolutely, Major.
Let Let me interrupt because the former president is speaking now. If we can bring that sound up, please.
We didn't have Israel being attacked. We didn't have Ukraine being attacked, and they would have never been attacked. We didn't have China threatening to take Taiwan. We didn't have ships being blown up all over the Middle East like happened today. We had a strong country. We had a respected country. And everybody was doing much better in this room. And I was better for the farmers, they say. Thank you. I was better for the farmers, they say, than any president in the history of our country. I got China to pay $28 billion to the farmers of our country because they took advantage of politicians that were doing a very poor job. And frankly, they took advantage of our great farmers, and that's not going to happen, and it will never happen with me. I stood up for ethanol like nobody has ever stood up for it. And I think that's very important. That has a big impact on Iowa and some other places, but in particular you. And we did a job like, frankly, nobody has done in a long, long time. We didn't have terrorism. We didn't have people pouring into our country. We didn't have an invasion where people are pouring in and coming in from prisons all over the world, from mental institutions and insane asylums all over the world. We have terrorists coming in now. In 2019, you probably saw the same chart. It was actually a little hard to believe even for me. They had 0 terrorists coming into our country captured. And as soon as we had an unfortunate event, we got more votes last time than any sitting president in the history of our country. And then they said, gee, we lost by a whisker, by somebody that would never got out of the basement. So we're going to be very careful. We all have to work together on that. We have to be very careful. But we had a country like we've never had. We had the most successful country we've ever had. We had the best economy we've ever had. And it was an honor to have won your state twice. We won twice, and we won decisively. And in fact, no president that's won Iowa, Ohio, and Florida has ever lost an election except for us. And again, we won twice, and we won in landslides, all of those states. And we're going to win them again. We have better poll numbers now than we've ever had. We've beaten Biden. And I call him Crooked Joe Biden. He's the worst president in the history of our country. He's the most incompetent, and he's the most corrupt president in the history of our country. And it's not even close. In fact, I said today the happiest person alive today is Jimmy Carter because his presidency looks brilliant by comparison to Biden. It looks brilliant. But very importantly, because we have to beat him, I'm the only one, every single poll over the last 2 months, and beyond that mostly, but over the last 2 months, I'm beating him and beating him very substantially. I'm saying we're beating him because we have to get him out. He's destroying our country. He is totally destroying our country. So I just want to say it's been an honor.
That was former President Trump addressing his supporters here in downtown Des Moines, Iowa. CBS News has projected that former President Trump will win the Iowa caucuses. Let's bring in Dave Kochel. He's a former senior Iowa advisor to Mitt Romney's 2008 campaign. Dave, it's great to see you. Early night for the former president. Anything about that surprise you?
No, nothing about that surprises me. Donald Trump was going to win these caucuses. He's had the lead from the beginning of this race until tonight.
Very stable race. It hasn't budged at all.
Hasn't moved much. We've seen some movement, obviously, out of Nikki Haley. We've seen some downward movement from Ron DeSantis. But this race for Donald, there's 2 campaigns. There's Trump against expectations. Is he going to break 50% tonight? If he doesn't break 50%, that means over half of Iowa said no thank you. The real race, though, is for second place. It's to see who gets that burst of energy going to New Hampshire. And that's going to be important because in 2016, Trump had a large field to run against here and in New Hampshire. It got smaller, but he still had 4 or 5 people in that race really into Florida. It's got to get to one-on-one really quickly. Donald Trump is the overwhelming favorite to be the nominee, but a second-place challenger that gets some energy into New Hampshire, one-on-one race, that could change the dynamic.
And Dave, you know as well as I do, if a Trump supporter were sitting here, he would remind both of us, well, Trump got 24% in Iowa in 2016, went on to become the Republican nominee, win the presidency. If he gets close to 50, That's twice as strong. That's
Yeah.
more momentum than he had in 2016.
Well, that's true for Iowa's standards. But again, we've got to get this race to 2 people if there's ever going to be any kind of competition. If he's got 3 people in this race, him, DeSantis, Haley, go on through South Carolina into Super Tuesday, everybody knows it's Donald Trump's race at that point. Him against the field, he'll always win. One-on-one will be something we really haven't seen before. If it happens early in a place like New Hampshire that really likes to surprise and often likes to reject Iowa's results, maybe we'll have a race. I think a lot of Republicans would like to see it be interesting, and it could get interesting. Right now, though, it's a good night for Donald Trump. They built the organization they needed. He's got a lot of energy here on the ground. We'll see how the numbers play out.
Right.
But I think we got to go to New Hampshire and see what happens next.
Dave Kochel, thank you so very much for joining us. Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan endorsed Nikki Haley over the weekend. He joins us next to assess the Republican field and what happened here in Iowa tonight. You are streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. So good to have you with us. CBS News is projecting that former President Trump has won the Iowa caucuses. Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, who has endorsed Nikki Haley, joins us now. Governor Hogan, great to see you. It's an early night for Donald Trump. It's a big night for Donald Trump, and so it appears. Your reaction?
Well, I don't think it comes as any surprise. I think we were all expecting a big win for Donald Trump. It's really a matter of expectations. You know, I haven't seen the numbers yet, but you know, Donald Trump at one point was up to 90% of the Republican primary voters, and yesterday he was bragging about it. He was at 70%. But I think we're going to wait and see if he does below 50 or above 50. I think that's important. But it's really a battle for second place and a race against expectations. I think, Ron DeSantis put all the marbles on Iowa. He's been focused on it. He was guaranteeing a victory for many, many months. And, at the very best, I think he's going to be a distant second place and potentially in third place. I think Nikki Haley's surging. And the great news is, it really doesn't matter who wins this one. The winner of the Iowa caucus has not been the nominee for 24 years. They've lost the last 5 elections. But New Hampshire is, having a little momentum going in there, I think helps, where Nikki Haley is down 6 or 7 points to Donald Trump. It's really a 2-person race. And I think if Ron DeSantis finishes third, he goes back to Tallahassee. If he finishes second, he can limp on to New Hampshire, where he's got 6%.
What is it in Nikki Haley that you saw, Governor Hogan, that led you to endorse her?
Well, I first of all think that she's the strongest. I want to see a Republican nominee that can beat Joe Biden, and I believe that she's the strongest nominee in November. She hasn't been the strongest one in the Republican base primary. I mean, Trump has been the strongest one, but Trump's the weakest one in November. I think Nikki Haley has a broader appeal. I like her positions on foreign policy. She's got the great experience as a governor and at the United Nations, and she's tough. And she's been the only one that's been gaining and going up, while both Trump and DeSantis and Ramaswamy are all going down. And I think I like the trajectory.
Governor Hogan, you know that the Republican National Committee is more Trump-oriented than it was in 2016. Many state parties are more Trump-oriented than they were in 2016. That means if you're going to take the nomination away from the former president, you've got to win places. Does Nikki Haley have a chance to win New Hampshire?
Yeah.
And even if she does, what's the next place that she could win?
Yeah, well, it's tough. There's no question that Trump and the MAGA wing controls the apparatus, and I'm not saying it's an easy climb, but I think she's the only one with a chance. I think if she comes out of here overperforming and she rolls into Iowa, where she's only down New Hampshire, and she's down single digits, she does have a chance to win there. And if she pulls off a major upset, it's happened before, where somebody comes from nowhere and wins, she rolls into her home state of South Carolina with a lot of momentum, and she's not leading there now, but I think with a win in Iowa, it could give her the boost that she needs. So it's a tough thing, but I'm not counting her out, and I'm hoping that she can continue to have the success she's had recently.
And very quickly, Governor Hogan, about South Carolina. I've traveled there a lot, And many South Carolina Republicans tell me the South Carolina Republican Party and the state itself that elected Nikki Haley governor is fundamentally changed since then. It's become a much more Trump-oriented state, and South Carolina won't be as hospitable to former Governor Haley as it was when it elected her so long ago. Your thoughts?
I think that's probably true, which is why she's down in the polls now. But, Major, you've been around long enough to know that, you know, one thing can change the momentum of a race. And if she were to pull off an amazing upset in New Hampshire, there's going to be a lot of attention and focus. We don't know what some of the continuing problems that Donald Trump's going to be having legally. You just never know what's going to happen over the next several weeks. So we got to play the game. I'm not guaranteeing a victory for Nikki Haley, but I think we shouldn't count her out.
Former Maryland Republican Governor Larry Hogan, we thank you so much for your time. Coming up, we look ahead to the next major contest. Governor Hogan was just talking about it, New Hampshire. You're streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. The next significant contest in the Republican process to pick a nominee will be a week from tomorrow in New Hampshire. With the departure of former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie from the race, his supporters, well, they're searching for a new candidate. For more, we are joined by CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns, who comes to us from New Hampshire. Caitlin, what is the scene there? You've been in New Hampshire a good long while. We're all here in Iowa debating what's going on, but what is happening in New Hampshire?
Hey, Major, good to see you. We're not allowed to complain about the cold here in New Hampshire, given what you guys are dealing with in Iowa, but it is likely to be a different kind of dynamic here in New Hampshire. We were on the ground with canvassers today supporting Nikki Haley, and they've already gotten to work. They're not waiting on Iowa's results. And as you know from covering these campaigns, New Hampshire likes to go a different way than Iowa does. They are a better predictor of eventual nominees, picking the last three nominees in the past three competitive elections. So they like to kind of go in a different route, and that usually works favorably for underdog candidates. New Hampshire is often a refuge for those who lost in Iowa. Donald Trump very much knows that. He lost Iowa in 2016, won New Hampshire's primary later. But can he retain that support? Polls show that he is leading here in New Hampshire as he has been in all the early states. Nikki Haley is making a play, especially now that Christie has dropped out.
Caitlin Huey-Burns in New Hampshire. We will back to you later in our special coverage. We thank you so very much. CBS News projects former President Trump wins the Iowa caucuses. We will have the latest from our data desk. You are streaming America Decides. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Des Moines, Iowa. I want to welcome you to a special edition of America Decides. CBS News projects that former President Donald Trump has won the Iowa caucuses. I want to show you what we are looking at in terms of the early data. We're still getting, of course, data in from the various caucus sites, nearly 1,700 across the state of Iowa. But as you can see, with 2% of the vote in, Trump at 54%, Ron DeSantis 19.1%, Nikki Haley 18.9%, Vivek Ramaswamy at 7%. We will, of course, update you on not only those vote totals, but the implications they will have in the all-important delegate count coming out of this first-in-the-nation Iowa caucus. We're going to go now to check our CBS News Elections and Surveys Director, Anthony Salvanto, who is standing by at the CBS News Data Desk. Anthony, as I know you love to do, please begin to break it down for us.
How you doing, Major? Okay. I'm going to show you the race for second place right off the bat. We projected Trump, as you said. Well, you got Ron DeSantis and you got Nikki Haley. And this shows you, in order of finish, what could happen right now. These are based on our CBS News Data Desk models. You've got Ron DeSantis, who could move from second to third right now. We don't know. You've got Nikki Haley, who's floating between third and second place. Could end up like this. Could end up like this. This is the race right now. And look, it's not going to be about getting more delegates than Donald Trump, because they're not, but it is going to be maybe about bragging rights, maybe about a little bit of a springboard as they then go into New Hampshire. The other thing I want to report to you, Major, is You said correctly at the top, of course, that we don't have a whole lot of vote in. That is your estimate right now for Donald Trump. He's above 50%. I know a lot of political watchers are kind of watching to see if he cracks that number. It's too early to say whether he will or he won't. You'll note that the places that have reported, many of them are smaller counties around. Some of the larger counties still haven't all come in yet. That, I think, you're going to have to wait to see before you can know whether or not Donald Trump hits that 50%. And then the final thing, Major, is I want to tell you turnout. We started the night thinking it would be around 150K. I'll just write it right here. But right now, based on what we're seeing in the precincts, I'm actually going to lower that down to around 130. So that cold weather may be having an effect, Major.
Yeah, I talked, Anthony, to Jeff Kaufman, who is the Iowa Republican State Party chair here, and he remembered that in 2016, it was about 187,000 was the turnout. He was hoping, even with the very bad weather, it'd be over 100,000. He thought it would still be strong, but that 130,000 would be closer to something that former or current Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was projecting, so he may have that right, but not much else in terms of a strong finish. Anthony Salvanto, we will get back to you at the data desk throughout the night. We thank you very much. CBS News campaign reporters Olivia Rinaldi and Aaron Navarro join us now. Olivia, I wanted to start with you at the Trump campaign headquarters here in Des Moines, the atmosphere and what you expect to play out as the evening progresses.
Yeah, Major. The music is now kicked on. There's a bartender here, and people are starting to finally trickle into this party. It was very weird after the Trump, that CBS News projected that Trump would win the Iowa caucus because no one was here. The public hasn't even been let in yet, so it was a very dampened atmosphere here at this party. People are starting to trickle in now. You know, we could hear some cheers from the media room next door, but I expect some elation. We know Donald Trump has arrived on site, and he will be making remarks here shortly, but they're really trying to get the most people in possible right now. There's streams of folks coming in right next to me. So really trying to get this party started to celebrate for former President Donald Trump on his big win tonight here in Iowa.
And Olivia, I'm sure what the Trump campaign would say, of course there was nobody in the headquarters. They were at the caucus sites where they needed to be because we have a turnout operation. They were all doing their actual caucus work. Olivia, we'll get back to you in just a second. I want to go to Aaron Navarro, who was at the DeSantis headquarters. Aaron, set the scene for us.
Similar to what Olivia said, people are just starting to trickle in. You got some music going on. And as you mentioned, Major, earlier in the afternoon, there were tons of Florida legislators that I recognize. The Lieutenant Governor, the Attorney General of Florida, were all here, kind of just gathering, mingling, before they were sent out to speak at these precincts. I was told by one official, one campaign official, over 70 Florida legislators are here in Iowa, spread out across the state. And right now, it's mainly media in the room right now. I mean, people are probably just starting to get back from the caucus. I know DeSantis is coming back from Dubuque from speaking at the caucus site there, and he's expected to speak here in West Des Moines. But as you mentioned, a very quick race call, and DeSantis officials, both with the campaign and Super PAC, are already downplaying it, using the media as their foil, as DeSantis likes to do, and saying that it is outrageous and, quote, unbelievable to make the race call this fast, in their words.
Olivia Rinaldi and Aaron Navarro, thank you very much. And just so our viewers know, we will go back to those respective headquarters when and if the candidates appear to discuss tonight's results. I want to bring in now John Dickerson and Finn Gomez. John, of course, CBS News chief political analyst. Finn is the CBS News political director. John Dickerson, let me start with you, please, good sir. We were preparing, that is to say, the collective media environment here in Iowa and those who are watching us here, for an early call and a Trump victory. That isn't a surprise, as Governor Larry Hogan said, but still, magnitude matters, momentum matters, and Trump will have the lion's share of it tonight, it seems to me.
Yes, and in politics, until President Trump tried to undo this, a win is a win. And particularly for President Trump, undo it by lying about the last election, I mean. For President Trump, he has not won or been a winner since 2016. Lost in 2020, lost the popular vote in 2016, of course. But in terms of Republicans, lost in 2020. His candidates in 2022 did not do well. And there was a feeling, as you remember, after those 2022 elections that, well, the Republican Party was going to move on from Donald Trump. If he has a very strong showing tonight, not only will the party not have moved on, he will be able to say, I'm a winner. And that kind of gathering steam behind winning, we've already seen the power it has in this party. You've seen people who criticized President Trump for his role in leading up to the January 6th attack now endorsing him. He has a kind of power over his party that I would say is more powerful even than when he was president, because of all the things that have come to be known about his behavior as president. And yet Republicans in good standing and at the height of the party are willing to excuse all of that to support him. So in that sense, this is it's one place. He was obviously going to do very well. But I think that it matters a lot, and it proves, it may not be something new that we learn, but it certainly locks in place a lot of what we've seen in what has been a race that's basically been frozen in place.
Finn, I want to talk to you about Iowa and the Trump campaign, because Ron DeSantis worked aggressively to build a campaign organization here, but so did the Trump campaign. And one not only found people, but found enthusiasts in much larger numbers than the other, and that's Trump over DeSantis. So it's not only about your intention to create an organization, you have to have a receptivity. People have to be willing to jump in. And they not only did the hard work, but they found the people willing to jump in.
They did, and they also learned their lessons from 2016. If you recall, there was that DMR NBC poll that came out just before the caucuses.
Des Moines Register, folks, for you following at home. DMR is our shorthand in the media.
That's right, but it showed that Trump was going to win. Of course, Ted Cruz beat him because he had that organization. He did have that robust grassroots operation, and from that lesson, that defeat, they since then have assembled their own very robust operation here in Iowa, and they did find that receptive base, that receptive MAGA base voter. This is a red state, of course, and while it was expected, this win tonight was expected. I think it is still the first contest of this nominating season, and I think let's see about the momentum. Obviously, we're still waiting to see what happens for the second spot, but this does give him the momentum that they wanted ahead of New Hampshire.
And Finn, you speak to the Trump inner circle. We all do, but you do with great frequency. It struck me in my conversations with them that they saw Iowa as not just important, but very important to answer this question that John Dickerson so helpfully raised. Was the party looking to move beyond Trump? And they believed that if they won Iowa, they would have an answer, and the answer is no. They're going to stick with Trump, which is why they were as disciplined and focused here as they have been.
They were, absolutely, and that's why you saw this operation. That's why you saw him visit. I mean, he didn't visit as much as the others.
No, he didn't.
But he still did come here more, and I think that what you've seen again is those lessons learned from 2016, and in fact, by demonstrating this again, it plants a flag for them for 2024, and again, it gives them momentum, they believe.
And John, when you ponder that question, is a national party ready to move on from former President Trump after January 6, 2021, after the 91, that's not a small number. That's a very large number of various criminal indictments on various charges, and you get a result like Iowa. Does that definitively answer that question, or does it only partially answer that move on question?
It sure, in collection with the other things that are happening, which is you look at all the sitting senators who they have other choices. It's not a forced march to make sure that Donald Trump gets a second presidency. In other words, he doesn't have to be indicted. The information in the indictments could cause one to render a negative verdict about his ability to go into office again, and then lead you as a Republican to other candidates, one of whom, look at DeSantis's record. I mean, won handily in an important state for Republicans in Florida, has a good record on a number of these issues. Nikki Haley also has a very good record. It's not like they want for choices. And yet, even with those good choices, they have gone behind Donald Trump. So that, plus the win, sure seems like it answers that question pretty definitively.
John Dickerson and Finn Gomez, thank you so very much. Let's go now to CBS Morning's co-host Tony DeCopel, who is inside a caucus site for us at Beaver Creek Elementary School in Johnston, Iowa. Tony, we were with you earlier. Catch us up on what has happened.
Major, it's been a very interesting night. They just finished voting. This was a room in favor of Nikki Haley, overwhelmingly so. Ron DeSantis second, Donald Trump a distant third. The most interesting development of the evening, and Anthony Salvanto will find this to be very interesting indeed. They had 50 forms for people who wanted to register tonight or switch their party registration. They ran out of those forms. Members of the caucus team here had to run out to multiple people's homes to get printer paper and get their printers fired up. They printed another 25 or so sheets of paper. They estimate about 75 people were new registrations or switched their registration from Democrat to Republican in order to play in this caucus tonight. And I think that's a big reason why Nikki Haley was lifted up. You're getting a little noise here as they clean up. Was so impressive in this particular outing. If she can repeat that, because we're talking about 20% of the vote here, thereabouts, give or take, were new registrations or crossovers, and that is above the typical rate. You see estimates about 10% in a typical open caucus. So if she can outperform in counties like this one, at caucus sites like this one, then that bodes well for her ability to have a strong second, which of course is what her campaign really wants to drive the narrative into New Hampshire.
And Tony, I want to ask you, as that process played out and they had to get more printer paper and there was a bit of a delay, did it remain orderly and calm?
Very orderly, very calm, and the caucus began with the caucus chair rising and saying, we gather here tonight with our Republican neighbors in our Iowa community. And I thought that was just such a beautiful notion. They said the Pledge of Allegiance. We've got a big flag on the wall behind me. On the walk in, the entire hallway is covered with pictures of fallen community heroes, veterans who have died in the line of duty over the decades in wars back to World War I. And it sets a tone for civility, for neighborliness, and not for nothing, it's an elementary school, so you've got some bywords, some watchwords on the wall here reminding people about the virtues of character and sharing and compromise and the idea of win-win. And so I think all those things together led to a really beautiful night. I'm going to get misty-eyed, Major. I'll have to send it back to you on that note.
I understand, Tony. I've had the privilege of coming to Iowa for this caucus process since the late 90s, and it is a community-based and collaborative and cooperative process. And Iowans of both parties take tremendous pride in it, and you saw it up close, Tony. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you witnessed it. Tony DeCopel, thank you so very much. We will have more from our team in Iowa after a quick break. You are streaming CBS News. Welcome back to America Decides. Here's something to think about. In 2016, the last time there was a contested Republican caucus here in Iowa, 19% of caucus goers said they made up their minds on the very last day. That's one reason Nikki Haley spent today, the final day, making stops all over Iowa to try to convince any remaining undecided voters she was the one they should back on caucus night. We'll all find out how well that paid off, once all the votes are in and the delegate process of distributing those delegates begins. CBS News campaign reporter Nydia Cavazos joins me now. Nydia's been covering the Haley campaign. It looks a little empty there, Nydia, behind you. I assume that the Haley campaign will assemble some supporters, and maybe the candidate herself at some point this evening. Set the stage for us.
Yes, Major, we're still waiting for Nikki Haley. She's expected to be here later on this night, as well as more supporters here in Iowa. But what we do know is that the battle for second place is on. It's between DeSantis and Haley. But Haley, throughout the day and even during her past campaign stops, she's been saying this was already between a two-person race. It's between herself and former President Donald Trump. She's been busy throughout the day, as you had mentioned, going from city to city, really getting her message across and making her final pitch to Iowans. Iowans. But within her message, she's been telling Iowans that they should also focus ahead on the general election. When it comes to the general election, Haley has been touting that she, in fact, is the only Republican candidate who, at this very moment, according to the latest polls, has a significant lead over President Biden. And this is over former President Donald Trump and even Governor DeSantis. So she tells Iowans to really focus on the general election and focus on this 17-point lead that she often mentions, which she refers to the Wall Street Journal poll. And when she mentions this is a line within her stump speech that generates a lot of reaction and enthusiasm from the crowd. And it's because it's a crowd that knows two things for certain. They're not willing to vote for former President Donald Trump, and they are not also looking forward to another administration under President Biden. So they're looking for an alternative. They're not necessarily always decided on who they're going to support, but they attend Nikki Haley's town halls for a reason. They're looking for this alternative, but tonight we'll be seeing if she can solidify her position in second place. As we know, she's been polling between second and third. A clear win would be for Nikki Haley to place in second, and this means that she would be carrying on momentum onto New Hampshire.
Nydia Cavazos, thank you so very much. CBS News campaign reporter Torian Small joins me now. Torian, tell me where you are and set the scene.
Yeah, Major, I'm at what the caucus chair here is calling a caucus mega site. There are 5 precincts all in this one venue. He anticipated around 1,500 to 2,000 voters would turn out for this caucus. I couldn't take a tally, but I will say this was a significant turnout in spite of the weather. There were concerns about turnout. We saw people still committed to coming out. I wanted to get to the results. I just ran inside to double check the numbers. Nikki Haley won 3 out of the 5 precincts here. Donald Trump won 1, Ron DeSantis won 1 as well. She had a very strong performance, and this is after she gave a mini stump speech during the proceedings here, followed by Donald Trump Jr. speaking on behalf of his dad. There was a very tense scene here, an awkward moment when he showed up. He said he didn't realize that she would be at this same caucus site, but he just said he wanted to speak on his dad's behalf. He targeted her specifically, at one point comparing her to Hillary Clinton. We know that now didn't really matter or necessarily play into the decisions of most of the voters here. Lastly, Major, I want to talk about what voters were telling me as they left the room. They said that a lot of them said that they supported Nikki Haley because they also believe that Donald Trump brings chaos to the White House. Chaos follows him. I think that's a testament to the strong message that she's been putting out during the final days of her stump here in Iowa.
Torian Small, thank you so very much. Leslie Sanchez joins me now. She is a CBS News political analyst who served in the George W. Bush administration. Leslie, always good to see you. I want to talk to you about something that we have gleaned from the entrance polls. Among those who decided late in this Iowa caucus process, 30% of those who decided late, meaning in the last few days, went for Nikki Haley. If we can bring that graphic up on the screen, that will be helpful to everyone concerned. Ron DeSantis, 29%. There we go. Oh, it's now 30. Oh. Decided in the last few days. Well, those are updated numbers. I'm going to roll with the updated numbers. 34% for DeSantis, 29% for Haley, 27% for Trump, and 9% for Vivek Ramaswamy. So, as you know, Leslie, some people decided late, but one of the things that was always constant in this race, the early support and the steady support for former President Trump, leading to his big victory tonight.
There's not a lot of suspense there, Major, as much as some people would have liked to have seen that. And less distance between second and third place. That has been a strong, significant part of the Republican Party. And it's interesting, going back to 2016 or 2020, how they described in the days leading up to the Iowa caucuses, how they described Donald Trump, somebody very unconventional, challenging the traditional norms of the GOP. It was so unheard of to hear these controversial statements. Going into 2020, same kind of thing. He has all these political rivals. It gets off course. 2024, he has legal cases and other chaos surrounding his campaign. But I think fundamentally, the Republican Party has fallen back in line there. I would say the momentum behind, interesting to see, with Nikki Haley, she has the momentum, but a very narrow demographic group and a geographic group as well in terms of where to get that support. And you're seeing that DeSantis's base of evangelical conservatives focused on him in those rural areas looks like it will pay off. can't say what it's going to do past today. Maybe a little bit more competition in New Hampshire, but that's where we are right now.
Leslie, as you know, you've been around this process a lot. Candidates try to claim a mantle of momentum coming out of Iowa. Can Haley claim a mantle of momentum after this caucus process from your vantage point?
Absolutely. I think she'll claim it either way. I feel like we're having a flashback to Pete Buttigieg, who claimed victory before there were, there were ever results on the Democratic side last time around. Going into New Hampshire, a lot more independents, people that are open-minded conservatives, are lean Republican, that are frustrated with Trump at the top of the ticket. That is open territory for Nikki Haley. But when you get past that, as you have reported, it gets incredibly difficult. The math gets incredibly difficult. So momentum strong there, ground game, but it's really people, a very narrow group, looking for that alternative.
Leslie Sanchez, thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you.
We will head to Trump headquarters in Des Moines next and hear from our Robert Costa, who is standing by there. You are streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. So glad you are with us. This is a live look at Trump's campaign headquarters here in downtown Des Moines, Iowa, where the former president is expected to speak. When he does, we will bring you those remarks live. CBS News has projected that former President Trump has won the Iowa caucuses. I want to go now to CBS News election and surveys director Anthony Salvanto, who is standing by, of course, at the CBS News data desk. Anthony, it's an important process that we go through to offer projections. Can you explain to our viewers how we got there and why we did so comparatively early in the caucus evening?
I will tell you exactly how. First, we sent reporters all over the state to interview voters as they were entering the caucus. And what did they tell us? They told us they were going to vote for Donald Trump, and they did so in overwhelming numbers. Okay, that was all over the state. Then we have another layer. We have reporters all over the state on top of that who are getting the results from the precincts as soon as they are completed. That all comes back here to the data desk. And when you put that together, and I'm going to show you, this is the current map, okay, this is the current map, but you get an idea. Yes, a lot of counties, a lot of places have yet to report, but this smattering you see of red is all Donald Trump. So every place you look, almost every place you look, is going for Donald Trump. We put that together in our models, and we can say that Donald Trump, at this point he's hovering around 50%, but he's got a very substantial lead on the other candidates, and that is how you know, and that is how CBS and the networks with their reporters find out and figure out who's won, Major.
And is there anything that you saw in the entrance poll data or the actual caucus results as they have come in that you would describe as thematic or representative of the night and the Trump victory?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is, I'm going to pull up the exit poll here. First, white evangelicals. We know this has been a strong part of Donald Trump's base. They are certainly a big part of Iowa, right? Majority, slight majority at this point in our estimates are white evangelicals. They went strongly for Donald Trump. And the other thing is, let's look at, I'm going to go over here and show you most important candidate qualities between shares my values and fights for people like me coming out when they had to select one top issue. What's important about this is that it's consistent with what we've seen from Trump supporters in Iowa and throughout the nation, which is they see him as a fighter. They have told us in polls that even things like the indictments against him, they often tell us they take them personally, see it as an attack on people like them. There's that strong connection, that loyalty, and they use the word loyalty, between them and Donald Trump. It is the likes of which we have not seen in polling and politics, and that is all consistent. We're seeing that here in Iowa, Major.
Anthony Salvanto at the data desk for us. Thank you so very much. I want to bring in CBS News Chief Election and Campaign Correspondent Robert Costa, who was at the Trump campaign headquarters in Iowa. First of all, Robert, do we expect the former president anytime soon, and the general reaction as you've been able to detect it there at headquarters?
Major, great to be with you. This moment is a moment of celebration for the Trump campaign, but for many Republicans across the country, especially those who do not agree with the idea of former President Trump becoming president again or their nominee again, it's a reckoning about where the party is, where it's going. Is it really going to have Trump begin a march toward another nomination, perhaps another presidency? Iowa tonight is a revelation in the sense it shows so many Republicans in places like Iowa with a conservative electorate are willing to go in that direction, despite Trump's mounting legal challenges across the board, local, state, federal, criminal, civil, and of course his role in trying to overturn the 2020 election with relentless efforts to pressure Vice President Mike Pence at the time and others.
Robert, the former president told you something directly last week that I can't get out of my mind, which is he told you, Robert, the courtroom is the campaign. And to that observation from the former president, we've gotten word this evening that he will be attending the E. Jean Carroll trial tomorrow. Put those things together for our audience.
This is a prism for exactly what's going to be happening in the coming weeks and months of this campaign. Should Trump continue to move toward the nomination, maybe even secure the nomination, he's going to be going from campaign stop to courtroom stop. He's going to be at E. Jean Carroll's defamation case in New York tomorrow, then fly to New Hampshire. Then he'll likely return back to New York for another appearance in court for the E. Jean Carroll trial later this week, and then go back to New Hampshire. And we expect him to, of course, attend all of his upcoming criminal trials, as he is supposed to do. As the defendant, I asked the former president in recent days, will you attend your January 6th trial? Will you fully participate in all of the hearings, even if they're voluntary? He said yes, he will be there. And he said, as you recall, the courtroom is now the campaign trail for Trump, because when I talk to Trump voters here in Iowa, the caucus goers say his grievances with the perceived political establishment, the perceived legal establishment in this country, are now their grievances. And that fuels their support for him. And in fact, they feel like they're more supportive of him now in 2024 than they were in the wake of January 6th in 2021 and 2022.
Robert Costa at Trump campaign headquarters right here in downtown Des Moines. Thank you very much. Well, it is a big night for the Republican Party here in Iowa, but how are Democrats reacting to all of this? Well, coming up, we will speak with the governor of Illinois. That's coming up after the break. You are streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. So good to have you with us. A new CBS News poll finds former President Trump, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley are all currently polling ahead of President Biden in hypothetical 2024 matchups. Well, who better to discuss that with than Illinois Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker. Governor, it's great to see you.
Thank you, Major.
I know what you'll say in part. Polls are early. They're not reflective of Election Day come November. True. But they do suggest a warning sign for the president, do they not?
Well, remember, this entire race has been about this Republican primary for the last, year, really. So all the press has gone to them, and not so much about the head-to-head between whichever Republican actually is going to win and Joe Biden. So I think the electorate really hasn't seen the two visions side by side or the two candidates side by side, which I think will change the race entirely.
A big Trump victory tonight, which it appears he's going to achieve, means what for the general election? That he's going to be the nominee? Are you basically assuming after tonight he's going to be the nominee?
Well, certainly if he had not won big tonight, things would be up in the air more than they seem to be. Who knows, though? You know, New Hampshire is very different than Iowa. South Carolina with Nikki Haley and probably the former president going head-to-head against one another. And, you know, we'll see what happens in those races. But certainly, you know, Donald Trump winning tonight means that he is likely to be the Republican nominee, but we'll have to see. And I do think that once we're able to focus on whoever the Republican nominee will be, this is, again, going to be an entirely different race, and people will see that Joe Biden is the one standing up for working families.
Governor, I was in the state for many months leading up to the 2016 Iowa caucuses. Trump identified immigration as a huge issue then. It's one of the things that propelled him to a strong second here in Iowa. I don't need to tell you, he's concentrated on immigration a great deal. I want to bring up something that's reflective of tonight's entrance polls here among Iowa Republicans, listing their issues in order of importance. The economy, 37%, immigration, 34%, among Trump supporters, 42%. Illinois and the city of Chicago has had to deal with the immigration issue most recently, as have other cities, New York, Washington, D.C. How do you see immigration playing as a wedge issue in the general election?
Well, I think it'll be an important issue to people, and people need to recognize that Democrats have been at the table looking for comprehensive immigration reform and border security for years now. I mean, literally decades, and Republicans are the ones unwilling to come to the table to negotiate and get something done. Once again, they're backing away from the table, it appears, in Washington, D.C. So unfortunately, I am not confident that we will see any kind of reform. And once again, it's the Republicans unwilling to work with the president.
Right, but Governor, you know that polling data reflects this, that there are Americans, even independents, who say they can discern a difference in Biden and Trump policies when it comes to immigration. How many people come in, how many asylum claims come into the United States, either with times to report later, and they just feel that the difference is so pronounced and something that they are no longer comfortable with. That is something that's within the president's ability to change, is it not?
Well, we don't have a head-to-head race yet, but in a head-to-head race, I think it would easily be pointed out that it was Donald Trump that created the chaos that's happened in Venezuela, that's caused so many people to leave that country and seek asylum in the United States. That's on Donald Trump. Now, the question is, once they arrive here, what policy can you put in place to keep people from getting asylum? And the president has sought help from the Congress, the Republicans in Congress. They're unwilling to work with him. So in the end, when we get to it, when there's a head-to-head race here, I think this will be pointed out to people, and they'll understand it's been Donald Trump and the Republicans that have kept us from having true immigration reform.
Do I hear you correctly, Governor, saying that on immigration, President Biden can fight it to a draw or actually win on the immigration issue?
I think that it's one that Democrats can win on, although I understand, as you look at the polls today, that fighting to a draw would be a pretty good place to end up. And the reality is what people really care about is their own well-being, their family's well-being, how they're doing economically. And things are getting better every single day in this country. People are earning more than they've ever earned before. We have higher wages, and those wages are above inflation. Inflation's going down. Gas prices are going down. We have, frankly, the best, most energy-independent nation that we've had ever. And it's Joe Biden that's bringing manufacturing back to the United States. So those are all things that really matter to people in their personal lives. And again, as we see the economy continuing to improve and people feel it, that's getting nearer to President Biden's benefit.
Let's get to the feel part of it, because that's an essential part of politics. You know that better than I do. There seems to be, Governor, a time perception gap here. The data reflect what you suggest, but it's not reflective in how people yet feel. What's it going to take for them to feel it and translate that into something that might be helpful to the president?
Well, things have been getting significantly better starting from the summer on, right? And whether people are feeling it or not in that those early days matters to how they're going to respond to polls. Now we've seen 6+ months of things getting better. Mortgage rates are coming down, inflation significantly down, wages are up. Those are all things that people do feel in their daily lives. And as time goes on, as you're experiencing that and seeing those dollars coming in, those are things that inure to the benefit of incumbents, and in particular to this president who has fought for working families his entire career.
Illinois is becoming a place where abortion access is looming larger and larger. In the great northern Midwest of our country, how important do you think that issue will be in the 2024 campaign?
It's a huge issue. I mean, I can tell you that, I ran for re-election in 2022. Abortion rights, even in Illinois, where it is safe and legal, was a huge issue, and I won the suburbs by double digits in a way that I hadn't done the first time I ran. And
people from neighboring states are coming to Illinois.
Now we've got people because they're being driven out, right? I mean, they're refugees from their states. You've got governors like Kim Reynolds who want to basically do away with abortion.
Here in Iowa.
In Iowa and in Missouri, and look at every state around Illinois, Kentucky, Indiana, Wisconsin. all of those states have restricted abortion rights, and so people who are just seeking to exercise fundamental rights have to come across the border into Illinois in order to exercise those. But we protect them when they come to Illinois. We want them to get reproductive health care, and in particular, women have been left out and left behind by the Republican Party. It's Democrats standing up for them.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Good to see you.
With CBS News projecting former President Trump as the winner of the Iowa caucuses, we will discuss all of the ramifications, large and small, with our CBS News political director. You are streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides and our continuing coverage of the Iowa caucuses, where CBS News projects former President Trump has won, and won handily. Let's show you some of the most recent numbers. These are, as I've been told, the most recent numbers we have, with 34% of Iowa caucus vote in. Oh, it's now 37%. I see it on the screen, 37%. These things change on a rather minute-by-minute basis, ladies and gentlemen, so please bear with me. You see former President Trump, 51.9%, just under 52. Ron DeSantis, just over 20%. Nikki Haley, a close third at 19%. Molly Ball and Finn Gomez join me here on the set. Molly is a senior political correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. Finn, of course, CBS News' political director. Molly, I haven't had a chance to talk to you tonight yet, so your impressions on what we've seen play out so far tonight.
I would say this is pretty much what we expected, a dominating win by Donald Trump. You know, there is this battle for second place, but that and $3 will get you on the subway, you know. With Trump over 50%, he really looks unstoppable. I think this outcome may have been baked for a while now, but it's still the biggest story out of tonight because it really puts him on a path to seal up the Republican nomination quite swiftly in this whole contest.
Subways are exceedingly hard to find in downtown Des Moines.
Fair enough.
We should also point that out.
Skyway is free.
The Skyway is free and quite convenient when it's 10 below zero, I can tell you. Molly, continuing on that theme, does this, because I think we're going to start to hear this from the Trump campaign, I think at some point, if not tonight, later on this week, inevitable is going to be a word that they're going to use. Do you think they will start to say, hey, gang, this thing's over?
Absolutely. I mean, you can tell from the way the campaign is talking about it, the way Trump himself is talking about it, they are itching to get to the general election, start making their argument for November. They don't take the competition very seriously. They are not very, look, he hasn't shown up to any of the debates. He never took his rivals in this race very seriously, and it seems that he was right to do so. You know, I think that was a key part of the strategy that got him to this point, was to have this air of inevitability, perform as a sort of incumbent, and a lot of voters saw him that way as well. And, you know, I was just at a caucus site. I've been in Iowa for several days talking to voters, and that's one of the biggest reasons that they give for supporting Trump, is just he's the only one that they see having that presidential stature, and they view him as basically an incumbent.
Finn, was there a time, let us say 6-8 months ago, when the Trump campaign thought DeSantis might be more formidable than he's proven to be, and did they focus on him and take him at least nominally seriously in order to push him back and push him down?
Absolutely. I recall, like, right after the midterms, when he was up on Trump, if you recall, he was up on Trump. He was beating Trump in some of those polling data that we saw then at the end of that year. Right, he was the heir apparent major, you know. And then I was on a trip with Trump here to Iowa on his plane to Davenport, where he turned on the switch, where he just attacked DeSantis over and over and over again. They saw him as a threat. They saw him as the one to beat. And now, you know, 6 to 7 months later, the focus is not on him. The focus has been on Haley, as they see a competitive fight in New Hampshire. We saw the polling where she is close to him. But you know who else is itching for that general election matchup? It's the Biden campaign. They've been focused on Donald Trump, and Donald Trump more and more has been focused on them. They're both itching to get to that general election matchup.
Finn and Molly, we have a monitor here. I want to bring your attention to it because we have some entrance poll data that shows a contrast in groups that Trump did not do that well with in 2016 as compared to now. And I think this is really important. No college degree, very conservative voters, economy voters, white evangelicals, big leaps for Trump in every single one of those categories. It's worth remembering, not only did he finish second here, but in 2016, Trump was viewed as the moderate, not the conservative. Right. All of those things have moved in his direction. Molly, what does that tell you?
Well, Well, it tells you a lot of things. I mean, first of all, he's grown with every group and he dominates every group because he's winning. So in some sense, it actually doesn't tell you that much. But what it does tell you is that a lot of previously skeptical Republicans, and we're talking 8 years ago, but the Republican Party has consolidated and really been reformed around Donald Trump. It is the party of Trump. And a lot of those voters who may have been skeptical of Trump when he first started out in politics are just not in the party anymore because it's become a party that is completely defined by Donald Trump's worldview, by his personal hobby horses and grievances. And so, you know, when people think Republican now, they really think about what Trump stands for. And that is testament, I think, to the power of his personality and to how completely he's sort of consumed the political apparatus.
And Finn, there are cynics and critics of the former President Trump who describe him as having a cult-like hold on the Republican Party that he has remade, in Molly's words. But you talk to Iowa Republicans here, many will say, I don't like him as a person, but I liked his policies. They actually go the other direction. Now, that might be a way of explaining things to a media person, but still it's worth taking note of.
Yeah, I mean, I think two numbers that jumped out to me. One are the voters on the economy and also evangelical voters. If you recall last time in 2016, he was not their pick. And going 30 points to where he is now, look, Ron DeSantis got some big evangelical support here. Bob Vanderplaats, who supported both Mike Huckabee in 2008 and Rick Santorum in 2012, the respective winners in those cycles, he picked Ron DeSantis. So did Kim Reynolds, the popular Republican governor, who's also popular with those evangelical supporters here, voters here in Iowa. That didn't seem to matter, did it? Because of his policies, because of who he picked to be on the Supreme Court, because of the reversal of Roe v. Wade. If you keep talking to evangelicals here, they reference that all the time. There's been a big difference here, I think. And I think it could continue to propel him as we get to New Hampshire.
As many have told me, a flawed leader, but solid on the policies that they care about most. Finn Gomez, Molly Ball, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for helping us out. That does it for our special edition of America Decides this Iowa Caucus Eve. John Dickerson takes over for our continuing coverage of the Iowa caucuses after the break. You are streaming CBS News.